If more of you supported the show, I'd be less sick of podcasts.
The blah blah.
Sending out good vibes.
The blah blah.
Good vibes. Good vibes.
The blah blah.
Good vibes. Good vibes.
108 breaths of deep gratitude and prayers for guidance and protection. And put on a didgeridoo and shamanic drumming track. Shivers or vibrations and stuff like that. 108 breaths of deep gratitude and prayers for guidance and protection. And put on a didgeridoo and shamanic drumming track.
Grimerica. We got some drama down here, and I think Mr. Trudeau and Mr. Morneau and the politicians who are trying to think through how NAFTA is going to get renegotiated and what's going to happen down here. Vanessa, how much money did you give the Clinton Foundation? How badly were you duped?
Okay, guys, welcome back to the Grimerica Show. We're going to be chatting with Charles Ortel again a little bit later, so don't shut it off just yet. I know a lot of you last time we got some, didn't really like, thought it was a little politically slanted. Hopefully now that we're not so close to an election, people have a little more time to settle in and listen to some of this charity bullshit that's going on. If you want to call it that, we've got Michael joining us for the intro. He's actually in the studio and Graham is not in the studio. But we'll still go with the one and only Graham Alt-Right Dunlop first.
Where does that come from?
It was in the book.
Should be white supremacist or something like that, maybe.
Was that your white supremacist admission?
No, of course not.
I didn't think so. Watch how you say that. It'll come off as that.
Somebody will grab it as a bite.
Oh, yeah, that'll be it. That'll be it. We'll be in there. We'll be labeled all right. We'll have Antifa out front.
Well, it's funny because Michael almost came to Red Pill Expo with me, and we had those guys on that I'd met there at the Red Pill, and they were talking about how the media was actually throwing terms like that out there for that group of people, which was completely uncalled for.
Yeah, well, I don't know. That's the Red Pill thing. It sounded great in theory, but then the closer it got, I just kind of got wigged out about it. I'm sorry I ditched you on that.
No, you didn't.
But I don't know. It was just kind of weird at the time. I'm glad you enjoyed it. It was funny how you
Did
came
you really
back
get
and you
wigged
were
out about it?
I don't know. I'm kind of nervous.
You didn't.
I'm nervous a little bit. Yeah, I don't know. It just seemed like it
you
was
had
so
other
big
things to
and
do.
perfect. It was the thing. It was so perfect. You know, it was like all the right people were there, and I don't know. And then there was something else that came up. I can't remember what it is right off the top of my head. But
Not wanting to be called alt-right like you.
But then when Graham came back, he was all like, "Oh, Trump's gonna save the world, and we've got to get out there and fight for him." I was like,
No,
"Okay,
really?
dude, calm down a little bit." I think you got
Actually, when he
brainwashed.
came back, he was listening to quite a bit of Alex Jones
He
too
was,
for a
yeah.
while. Yeah,
You picked up an AJ habit while you were down there.
Yeah, which is I think I've been.
But it was good. I think Red Pill is going to be a good thing if they do it year after year.
Yeah, probably.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, I haven't been following any of this stuff for a couple months, so I do feel a little bit out of the loop.
Oh, wow. Well, it's probably good that you're taking your break. Now's the time because the shit's about to hit the fan.
Well, that's what I was wondering. I was like, well, as soon as I take a break, everything starts happening because, it was getting somewhat annoying, all the negativity and all this shit going around, and nothing ever seemed to happen. But this is an important episode with Charles Ortel because to me, this is one of the most important things and this is why there's all this pushback against this, what's going on right now is that these vehicles of influence, that's what I sort of call them, and these charities and NGOs and organizations that are funneling money from, foreign governments and corporations and all that into this pay to play stuff is like, if it's, there's all this focus on the Clintons and the foundation. And that's why, if that goes down, that sort of takes that whole model down, or at least it makes it way harder to thrive in that model.
I don't know. It almost kind of seems like mafia families just going at it right now. Like it's all just Wild West almost.
definitely has that feel to it for sure.
Yeah,
definitely. I mean, look, we started looking into it on this show. We were talking to him, looking up some of Trudeau's shit. And I mean, his foundation has gone up fucking 350-fold since he became fucking prime minister.
Yep.
Yeah. Actually, I think since just before he got elected.
That's right.
Or when he probably started running, it started going up when he started running. It's like, okay, here, now we'll funnel money to this guy.
Yeah, and then last year was something like $600 million of foreign donations to the Justin Trudeau Foundation.
It will be interesting to hear from Charles, though, for, last time you talked to him. When was the last time?
Right
do you
before,
know?
but like 2 months before the election.
Oh, wow. So, I mean, things are just so radically different now. He must just be...
Well, he says at this time that he says he's talking to high-level people in other governments and stuff that are like everyone's fucking had it with the Clinton Foundation. And now that she's not in power, it's just like, nope. Probably what it is a bunch of people paid and now they're not going to get their play.
That's what it sounds
Well, yeah,
like.
exactly.
Yep. And so they're all
it's not just a couple bucks, right? We're talking hundreds of millions. So when you throw $100 million around and nothing comes back to you.
And so many of her friends are now, quote unquote friends, but, are starting to go down and be outed for all sorts of different things. And it just makes you wonder. It's like they're being undercut from lots of different ways.
It seems
the
like
Saudi connection
given,
now,
yeah.
What's going on over there. And
well, definitely it seems like a bunch of Saudis that were connected to him just got arrested and everything else.
So how does that play in? I mean, it's just...
Well, I mean, the way I was talking to Jerry the other day, I don't get too far into it here, but I mean, the way he explains it is he thinks that it's all like precursor and it's all ties into these sealed indictments that people, high-level people in the U.S. government are indicted right now.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is they're still dancing around how the fuck they roll it out without causing fucking civil war. And it's a real it's a lot more delicate than you think. I mean, it seems as easy to just say fucking lock her up, but as soon as you lock her up, you've got a huge problem with fucking half of the country. So it's dancing around that, and I think like looking at cutting off the Saudis and stuff like that is kind of cutting off the cash flow or cutting off ability to, because the one Saudi dude owns Twitter and all that, so now you've maybe relinquished some of their hold on social media a little bit. I don't know. Maybe it's different ways like that. Like, I mean, to me, social media probably shuts off. If it happens, social media shuts off for a while. That's what that.
I don't understand that. What do you mean?
There's just no social media for a couple months while fucking everything's happening. You start arresting Podestas and Clintons and fucking, I'm telling you right now, you're going to be closer to civil war than that country's been since the Civil War. Well,
they've got to redirect and give them another hero to follow before they take down those. I think is maybe they're trying to build somebody up to get going. I mean, all these...
So it would have to be somebody on the left. Somebody on the left would have to come and do it and condemn themselves.
Biden's going to fix everything for you. Everybody put your weight behind him. Who cares about the Clinton thing anymore? That's old news.
Oh, you're right, actually. Yeah.
But right now, if they go after Clinton, because there's no figurehead for them right now, right?
Bernie? Will it be Bernie?
Bernie didn't, from what I understood, Bernie never actually wanted to be president. He was just doing it for the kids, to get them involved, to get them to get out there and be informed and...
Or for the cash,
involved. Too. I don't know. I could be wrong on that, but it doesn't seem... I don't see Bernie as president, maybe being in the cabinet for sure. Like, I thought Trump would have picked up Bernie for something in the cabinet. That just seems like, if he would have done that...
Bernie hates him too much, I think.
So, like, he offered Bernie a job and he said no?
I don't think he did, no. I think Bernie just called him Hitler and then he was like, fuck you. Who knows, so. I know Bernie don't got a job. Bernie got 3 houses, though.
I'm sure he's doing just fine.
Oh yeah, Bernie's got.
Well, do you think this all this Hollywood stuff and all this sexual predation coming out is just part of this whole thing as well to ease the rollout? I mean, is it part of the whole plan? Maybe.
Well, I think even SNL now is turned on like the Democrats.
Really?
Yeah, I think they had a skit last night. I heard that they were making fun of the Democrats for, fresh faces for 2020, Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders. Kind of starting to take light jabs.
As they should, though. They always should.
You would think.
You can't just
for a long time.
A
long time it was going that direction,
Yeah.
Anywho, what do you got for me, buddy? I want to play a jingle. Did you go see City in this weekend?
Nope.
Oh.
No, I want to keep talking about this other stuff. Like what's going on in Saudi Arabia?
You know what's going on in Saudi Arabia?
Not really.
Wow, it's pretty crazy over there.
Like fucking 200 people just got arrested, including 11 princes, government people, for corruption, high-level corruption. With a combined net worth, 11 of them had a combined net worth of $200 billion.
Okay, so this is a quick primer from...
Oh, is this the one you were talking about briefly?
Yeah, on Peak Prosperity. I don't know if I should be reading this, but Chris Martinson. Unless you study it intensely, Saudi politics are difficult to follow because they are rooted in the drama of a very large and dysfunctional family battling over its immense wealth. If you think your own family is nuts, multiply the crazy factor by 1,000. Sprinkle in a little willingness to kill any family members who get in your way, and you'll have the right perspective for grasping how Saudi politics operate. The House of Saud is the ruling royal family of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. It consists of some 15,000 members. The majority of the power and wealth is concentrated in the hands of roughly 2,000 individuals. 4,000 male princes are in the mix, plus a larger number of involved females, all trying to hang on or climb up this constantly shifting mountain of power. Here's a handy chart. So if you want to go to Peak Prosperity, you can see the chart. But basically, what it's saying here is that the current ruler, King Solomon, and his powerful son, Mohammed bin Salman, who's 32, has basically risen up and he's taken over the military and pretty much everything. And he just arrested, what did you say? It was like 200 people?
I think it's right around 200. About 11 of them were princes.
Yeah. It feels kind of weird reading this, so I'm just not used to that yet, but...
You can pass it and I'll read it if you have it pulled
You're
up.
doing good.
Yeah, you're doing good. I actually, you could walk right in here.
Well, I think I'd rather highlight it all because I want to skip through it and you can't. It's hard.
Oh, yeah, highlight it. Yeah.
Yeah, but I can't do that right now. I should have done it earlier.
Oh.
Anyway.
Like literally highlight it. I thought you meant like just pick out the highlights.
Yeah. So before we do, let's though talk about the most seminal moment in recent Saudi history, the key oil for money and protection deal struck by the Nixon administration in King Faisal back in the early 1970s. This pivotal agreement allowed the KSA, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, to secretly recycle its surplus petrodollars back into the U.S. treasuries while receiving U.S. military protection in exchange. The secret was kept for 41 years, and only recently revealed in 2016 due to a Bloomberg FOIA request. The essence of the deal is pretty simple. KSA wanted to be able to sell its oil to the then largest buyer, the USA, while also having a safe place to park the funds, plus receive military protection to boot. But if it didn't want anybody else to know, especially its Arab neighbors, that it was partnering with it was partnering so intimately with the U.S., who in turn would be supporting Israel. That would have been politically incendiary in the Middle East region, coming that it was right on the heels of the Yom Kippur War of 1973. As for the U.S., it got the oil it wanted, and double bonus time here, it got KSA to recycle the very same dollars used to buy that oil back into U.S. treasuries and contracts for U.S. military equipment and training. Sweet deal. Note that this is yet another secret world-shaping deal successfully kept out of the media for over 4 decades. Yes, Virginia, or yes, Graham. Actually, it would probably be yes, Darren. Conspiracies do happen. Secrets can be and are routinely kept by hundreds, even thousands of people over long stretches of time. Since that key deal was struck back in the early 1970s, the KSA has remained a steadfast supporter of the U.S. and vice versa. In return, the U.S. has never said anything substantive about KSA's alleged involvement in 9/11 or its grotesque human and women's rights violations, not a peep, until recently. In 2015, King Salman came to power. Things began to change pretty quickly, especially once he elevated his son, Mohammed bin Salman, to a position of greater power. Among MBS's, Mohammed bin Salman, His first sacks was to directly involve KSA into the Yemen civil war. With both troops on the ground and aerial bombings, that war has killed thousands of civilians while creating a humanitarian crisis that includes the largest modern-day outbreak of cholera, which is decimating highly populated areas. The conflict, which is considered a proxy war because Iran is backing the Houthi rebels while KSA is backing the Yemeni government, continues to this day. Then in 2016, KSA threatened to dump its $750 billion in stated U.S. assets in response to a bill in Congress that would have released sensitive information implicating Saudi Arabia's involvement in 9/11.
I was just going to ask you about that.
Then President Obama had to fly over there to smooth things out. It seems the job he did was insufficient because KSA-U.S. relations unraveled at an accelerating pace afterwards. Mission not accomplished. 2017, KSA accused Qatar of nefarious acts and made such extraordinary demands that an outbreak of war nearly broke out over the dispute. The Qatari leadership later accused KSA of fomenting regime change, souring the situation further. Again, Iran backed the Qatar government, which turned this conflict into another proxy battle between the two main Gulf region superpowers. In parallel with all this, KSA has been supporting the mercenaries, the rebels, who are seeking to overthrow Assad in Syria. Yet another proxy war between KSA and Iran. It's been an open secret that during this conflict, KSA has been providing support to some seriously bad terrorist organizations like Al-Qaeda, ISIS, and other supported enemies of the U.S. NATO. Again, the U.S. has never said boo about that, proving that U.S. rhetoric against terrorists is a fickle construct of political convenience, not a moral matter. Once Russia entered the war on the side of Syria's legitimate government, the U.S. and KSA lost their momentum. Their dreams of toppling Assad and turning Syria into another failed petrostate like they did with Iraq and Libya are not likely to pan out as hoped. But rather than retreat and lick their wounds, KSA's King Solomon and his son are proving to be a lot nimbler than their predecessors. Rather than continue losing a battle in Syria, they've instead turned their energies and attention to dramatically reshaping KSA's internal power structures. There's another article that it kind of wants to link to and tells you all about Saturday's massacre, but it's pretty much what Darren was saying, how they arrested a bunch of people. They put them all into the Ritz-Carlton, and they're basically locked they're kept inside this Ritz-Carlton right now, supposedly. All these royal families, people worth $800 billion, is what he's looking to, in corruption charges, to get from them.
That's right. He's going to end up getting it, I think, too, and they're going to end up dead. And then he's going to go on that stock exchange, which is going to boost the U.S. economy.
Yeah. What was it? They're looking to put Aramco on a stock exchange for 5% of it. And 5% at current rate would be $100 billion, which is, I think Alibaba started at $20 billion or something like that. So it would be 5 times larger than the largest IPO that's
in world
ever
history.
been in history.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's only 5% of Aramco. And so a lot of people are kind of battling over which market that's going to be on. Is it going to be on the Chinese market or in New York, basically? And so he's beginning to side more and more with China and pull out from U.S. As is what it's
until a fucking rocket fucking fired off over his fucking back door, and until Iran and him end up at war, and he needs the U.S. again.
Yeah. So this.
Well, I mean, is that why Trump went over there so early?
I think Trump's always sort of seen that adding that to the New York Stock Exchange as being a way to help fucking stimulate the GDP in a way that, you know, you get that 5 or 6% growth for a year or two instead of 1%, and you beat down the debt. I mean, if you can go in a couple of years and have knocked a couple of trillion off the debt, I mean, you're looking pretty good. And if you can do that just by moving some paper around, that's even better.
Say that again? How was he going to do that?
By adding Aramco or whatever the fuck it's called into the New York Stock Exchange. It's just like instilling like $100 billion into the economy. And so
Huge
I don't know
injection.
exactly how it works, but it ejects that basically into your economy. And I suppose would
Well, I think you can use that as an asset to leverage off of.
exactly. And it goes into the GDP, and all of a sudden now your growth, instead of 1% or 1%, I think, or 2% of where it's been for the last forever, which doesn't allow you to beat down the debt. I mean, I don't know how exactly it translates and multiplies and works out, but it seems like something that could put a pretty big step in the right direction to doing the debt. I mean, at the end of the day, to me, it seems like a dirty trick. It's like a parlor trick because you're not actually changing anything. You're just throwing a new variable in to give you some sort of temporary solution. It's like a Band-Aid.
Yeah, you're just reporting it all differently.
Yeah, it's just a Band-Aid. Buys you a couple of years, but it might be able to
But
buy.
I mean, it's better than
It might
funneling
be
it all
able to
through.
buy them enough time to get through the fucking financial collapse. That seems like it could be, any day.
Yeah, and it seems like it's better than what was going on before, where it was just all backdoor deals and in bribery, right? So,
That may not change, though.
well,
No, probably won't.
it will with all the focus on the foundation. Like, that's not going to be. It might have to go through different platforms now.
Yeah.
With a little luck, yes.
It'll be a less Wild West, I guess. Maybe.
Or more Wild West because they don't have the structure. I mean, this was all these foundations and these charities and the NGOs were how all this stuff is happening, right? It's how Soros fucking works his games, and it's how these guys were all getting political favors and arms deals and all this kind of stuff. So if that's gone, then now it's going to be more Wild West, I think.
Maybe Soros is going to jail. Why else would you give away all your money?
He's going to die soon, isn't he?
There's
Like
that
90
too.
something?
Fuck, he looks pretty good for 90.
He does.
Looks pretty good for death himself.
I'm sure he's got a good doctor.
Fuck yeah.
Or a whole
Guaranteed.
team of doctors. Was he worth like $80 billion? I'd have a doctor if I had $80 billion.
Hey Siri, what's George Soros? Hey Siri, what's George Soros's? Oh, you fucking. I installed that update. It was supposed to fix it. Hey Siri, what's George Soros's? No, maybe I didn't install the update. I said I was going to, and
But Graham, I don't know if you know that just about 2 hours ago or something earlier today, a 7.5 or so earthquake hit on the border of Iraq and Iran.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
This massive earthquake just hit right there. So I haven't had a chance to really see what's going on there because it's fairly recent, just watching Duche's
says 8,
channel.
It says 8 billion on there.
8 billion?
Hmm.
No.
Is that because
So
he
he
just
got
lost?
away.
He was worth 26 and he gave away fucking 18.
Oh, wow. Okay. So he's not that rich. He only got 20 billion, not 80. That was way off.
He's only got 20,000 million.
Prior to the transfer, Soros had a $23 billion fortune and he gave away 18 billion.
He just
So Soros's net worth has dropped to an estimated 8 billion after giving all that money to the NGOs or whatever the fuck.
well, that's probably still enough to live on.
Yeah, I think he'll be okay. Yeah, he should be okay. I would have kept maybe 10 in case he loses, $1 billion a year.
hmm
You want at least $1 billion a year.
But I mean, it's still mind blowing. I don't know if people realize how much influence that is. 18 billion into those organizations, like that's crazy.
Especially because he's
That's like
really good
1%
at
of
it.
the entire Canadian economy, I think.
Because what, Michael?
That he's just really good at it. He's very efficient at what he does, and he makes
Yeah.
good money on the way down and the way back up.
Yeah.
So he's really good at the business model that he's created, which
Yeah.
just happens to be nation destroying. But it's a good business for him.
It's called the God model.
Proved to have worked well.
4 billion. Our economy is 4 billion. No, that can't be right. No, that's the money we give away. Sorry. Yeah, that's right. I want to say it's like 1.75 trillion.
Really, that big? I was going to
Yeah.
say closer to just 1 trillion.
I think it's 1.73. I looked it up not long ago for some reason.
Hmm.
I'm a nerd, I guess. Watch me catch Grant with his pants down.
Well, with the whole Saudi Arabia thing, it's very likely that the price of oil is going to go up. So here in Canada, especially in Alberta, things are going to begin to look better again.
Yeah, I think the Canadian economy is about to fucking skyrocket.
And with all the construction they've been doing around here, you have to wonder like how well that's known in the higher circles, because
Yeah, exactly.
it's just ridiculous. They're redoing everything here. Like they're going to expand to 10 million people or something.
Fucking out of here before.
What? Well, I wouldn't go that far. Where do you get that from?
The bridges they're installing and all the money.
No,
that
that's just to keep up with minor growth.
Well, you
got
to I don't know. What were you saying? By 2030, they wanted to. Calgary wants to take over Chestermere and everything in between.
Yeah, that's what they're saying. Yeah,
like that's like 30 miles probably of filling with houses. That's huge.
No,
that's about
10.
7K.
Is it really
7K? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
From the house line of Chestermere to the house.
That's 4
line.
miles. Yeah.
Still, that's a lot of houses, man.
Well, I think their mandate is to go up, and they're building more condos and stuff. That's what's happening right now. Is the downtown is becoming more populated finally, instead of spreading out like that. So that's why there's so much construction downtown going up.
It just seems like everywhere they're building everywhere.
Seems like we have way too many hotels too.
Darren and Graham are going deep.
You think he's ready?
It's a profound UFO quote of the week. Words to ponder and critique.
Alrighty.
It's a profound UFO quote of the week.
That comes across fuzzy for me. I don't know why.
Because you're not in the studio.
I am ready, and I'm looking at the CIA website. It's very appropriate for this episode. This is the reading room, searching UFOs, CIA.gov. I'll put a link in the show notes. Air Force and the CIA reprimanded. The director of the Aerial Phenomena Research Organization, APRO, a group dedicated to scientific investigation of flying saucers, said Friday night in San Antonio, the more we know about some specific UFO cases, the harder such cases are to explain away. The comment came from L.J. Lorenz in Tucson, Arizona, speaking at a UFO seminar sponsored by APRO at Trinity University. Lorenzen castigated the Air Force and the Central Intelligence Agency for deception in reporting observed UFO cases, and said the subject of UFOs has been taken underground where the CIA feels it should have been all along. Lorenzen said the goal of the APRO is research and objective study, but, he added, government deception has made it difficult to get reports on the cases that we need. Sometimes, he added, government reports leave out information that would substantiate the unknown nature of UFO sightings. Lorenzen discussed several recent UFO sightings now under APRO investigation. Included is one report of a glowing disc spotted by a Kansas farm boy that left a powdery deposit on the ground. Lorenzen said no current Air Force or CIA investigation of UFOs is apparent, but I'm sure, he said, that the Air Force is still investigating such sightings as a matter of national security. Lorenzen says the most common UFO sightings have been reported in all sections of the nation. He said there has been little or no verified contact with occupants of UFOs. More than 300 persons attended the Trinity seminar. Also speaking were Richard Greenwell, Assistant APRO Director, and R. Richland Stanford. And that's from February 5th, 1972. And it's funny because it looks like it's been scanned into the reading room, and they have a check in the first paragraph and a check in the second paragraph, and UFO is underlined and CIA is underlined. And then the little part where it says APRO is research and objective study is like surrounded by pen. So it's interesting. So somebody's obviously gone through this on behalf of the CIA and put it into their document collection.
Nice. It's a good one.
Well,
you just ripped from the CIA website.
Yeah, exactly. It's crazy, eh?
That's not bad. Hey, guys, do run over to grimerica.ca/support if you can. Helps us keep having these sorts of conversations with guys like Ortel. We don't have to put any commercials or any advertisements in this bullshit. We don't have to turn you guys into the product. And if you can help us out in that quest, it would be great. Grimerica.ca/support. If you can sign up for a monthly, that really does help out the best. If you can do that, there's options there for as low as $1 a month, which works out to about 25 cents an episode. I think about the $5 a month is the most popular, which is about $1 a show. So if you can sign up for that one right now, that'd be super. If not, you can do one-time donations. I think PayPal's actually switched it around now too, so you can actually if you go to the one-time donation, click that, you can punch in whatever number you want there. And I believe there's a box to check now that will turn that into a custom subscription. So you can make your own custom subscriptions now.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, because some people are having a hard time finding the one-time donation. I think they said that they can only find the monthly one.
It's directly, just keep scrolling.
Okay.
Yeah, just keep scrolling.
Yeah, and if you can't afford to do that, review the show or send us feedback or emails about articles or information you have,
That's
stories.
Right. Review the show, share the show, sign people up for the newsletter.
We really can't do it without the support. Like we didn't plan on it happening this way, but we definitely, recognize the people that support the show, and it really does help out, and we can't do it without you.
I do got a couple of reviews here we got this week. A lot of people have been reviewing the show lately, so that does help.
Yeah, that's really helpful.
Cool.
Dollars help, but reviews help too. So I got a couple here I'll read off from Labor of Love in the USA. Podcasts like these are always my favorite. People taking their private chats and putting out into the world. Hey, anyone know of a grammar podcast? Thanks, Labor. And then we got another one from No Wi-Fi. Boss, Newfie, it's 10:30. You should have been here at 9. Newfie, why? What happened? 3 conspiracy theorists walk into a bar. You can't tell me that's a coincidence. How do you get a baby alien to sleep? Rocket. I don't really know how to decipher that one. It was pretty funny.
Yeah.
Thanks for the review there. No Wi-Fi and Labor of Love. So review the show,
Right
share
on.
the show, sign up for a monthly. Honestly, that'd be great. Can't do that, we understand. Anything else, motherfucker?
No, that's it for me. No, thanks for joining us, Michael. It's great to chat with you again.
Oh, yeah. Thanks
Yeah.
for having me back.
Yeah, and Michael brought the electrician over so we can finally get some proper power into the igloo and less worry about kicking breakers.
Yep.
You can get some proper fucking, some
Heat.
cool, a neon sign maybe. Yeah, some more heat.
Oh, I got a couple of things to bring. I got a neon thing.
I want to get one of those fucking crazy magnetic floating globes like I have in the house road here. It's fucking wild.
I am a little scared because you guys are this place is going to be humming with all the electricity you'll have.
I'm going to get
available.
superpowers one day.
Yeah, probably.
You better bring some of those Oregon fucking things over.
I got one. I got a pyramid ready for you here.
Okay. All right, guys. Enjoy the chat with Charles Ortel. Just trying to go easy on the hate mail.
Yeah, be nice to each other.
That's right. Everybody just love each other, motherfuckers. Enjoy the chat.
All right, so for the second time in Grimerica, we've got Charles Ortel back. He's a investor, a writer, interested in economics and geopolitics, and we had him on talking about false philanthropy. We'll talk about that again this time. He's got some new stuff going on, and he's also got a new video out Sunday, Sunday with Charles on Crowdsource the Truth. So we'll talk
Video
about that
show,
a little bit as well. Yeah. So welcome back, Charles. Thanks for coming on again.
It's my great pleasure. Hope you guys are doing well out there.
Yeah, things have been good. You know, it's actually pretty funny. We don't, in 250 episodes, we haven't got too much blowback on the show. I think the first show we did on vaccines, we got a little bit, and we got one when we did a Freemason a little bit. But we released this one on the Clinton Foundation, and I couldn't believe the amount of hate mail we got on it.
I mean, it wasn't a lot. It's just more than usual. That's all.
Yeah, definitely more than usual. And it was all very politically charged. But I think in retrospect, because I think we released that episode about a month before the election.
Right. And I think we don't have a very polarizing political audio, like listenership at all. I don't think.
Stats, really.
But I think it's so easy for people just to say, oh, you know, you guys were talking about the Clinton Foundation, and then they started labeling us right and
alt-right,
all this stuff, and it's just like, wow,
turning
like
into Red Ice Radio.
Yeah. So have you had to deal with that a little bit, and what's your feeling on that?
Well, so the thing that's really interesting when we now look back, it's over a year, almost exactly a year after the election. What happened, I think, and is what is happening, not what is in Hillary's book, which basically explains nothing, but what actually happened and is happening is that there's an unusual confluence of events down in America where on the Democratic side, and I was a Republican years ago, but I don't like either party, and I didn't vote in 2016. Right. In either in the primary or the general, because I wanted to be able to be completely neutral and remove that argument, and also because I live in Manhattanistan, New York, where my vote doesn't matter. So, but in any case, what I perceived in 2015 or hoped was that people across the political spectrum would actually end up being against charity fraud. And that is what I have found to be the case. Indeed, I have spent the most time on any platform with a great person named Utrice, a lady, Utrice Lead on Progressive Radio Network, where I'm on average an hour a week with her, and her audience is, definitely left-leaning. And she is passionately up in arms, a crusader against what the Clintons have done, because it's not simply it's really not a case of purely left and right issues. I would hope there aren't many people on the left who are in favor of fraud and stealing money from requests that to help desperately poor people of Haiti, where I'd remind your audience and the Canadian audience that Canadians are very generous to the Haitian relief effort. The only problem was it was run in small part by Bill Clinton, in another small part the Clinton Bush Haiti Fund, but the monstrous piece of it was run under UN auspices. Some guess as much as $13 billion in aid was jointly administered by Bill Clinton and a former leader of Haiti, and they refused to this day, 7+ years after the event, to account for any of that money. So at the time, it was politically charged. There was a lot invested down here anyway, and I guess abroad inside the U.S., although it wasn't supposed to be, in the notion that Hillary Clinton would be the first female president, and if you said anything negative about the Clintons down here, you were a misogynist. And, it was completely wrong. And, we look back at this period and we said, and I remember, because I obviously was talking actively and being interviewed actively and thinking about it, and I tried to think deeply about it, very, very few people believed that Donald Trump actually would win. And in fact, I got a phone call from a friend of mine who, a very nice person, a veteran political strategist, Republican, who was being sent by an unnamed publication to cover the victory celebration, the shattering of the glass ceiling. And this person asked to meet me right before the election in Trump Tower, and she doesn't live in New York. And I said, look, there's no way we're going to get into Trump Tower on Election Day. Oh, no, I have a friend. He didn't even exactly know how to get to Trump Tower. The security was intense. And so but she's very strong-willed. She's the political expert. I'm the banker. I'm the investor. What do I know about politics? Anyway, so we go into this atrium in a building nearby, and she says, Charles, look, I know you really think that the Clinton Foundation is going to get exposed, but I'm here to tell you there's no way that Donald Trump wins. There's a blue wall. I'm familiar with the blue wall. In no way a Republican can get an electoral college win. You're just going to have to resign yourself. You may want to think about, leaving the country because Hillary's going to win and they're going to go after you.
Yeah.
And I said to this person, I said, listen, I'm not going to debate your political expertise. Let's just put that on the side. I just want to ask you one question. Can you think about the scenario where you might be wrong? Are you prepared to entertain that you could be wrong? And then another 15 minutes of, no. So I went through this for a while. Finally, I said to the person, I said, look, I got to go, and you got to go, and whatever. So around about 8 o'clock, as the first results started being counted, I called this person, who was indeed over at the celebration. And then 8:45, how's it going? 9:15, how's it going? And at about 9:45, I called the person. I said, well, I'm going to bed because I know who won. and so, it was really a tidal wave. And I think what happened last year, in part, was that people on the left, the Berniacs, and in my family, there's some Berniacs, my children, they couldn't stomach the Clinton corruption. And a lot of them stayed home and didn't vote. Whereas on the other side, one of Trump's winningest lines down here, for example, dealing with trying to get the black vote, where, past Republican nominees have gotten bupkis in the way of black vote. He said, how much worse could I possibly be? And that's really true. I mean, what we're seeing now across the spectrum in the United States is we're seeing that people who were held in high esteem, the celebrity culture, the sports culture, pretty soon we're going to get to the academic culture, they're all a bunch of elitists who, we were prepared to accept, do great things without checking too carefully. And then, the absolute, what power, what is it?
Absolutely corrupts, absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so we have this system of globalists. Your own country, leaders in your country, I believe, embrace the notion of globalism because you're a G8 country and your leaders stand to populate global governance, even though Canadian population and our population is small relative to China and India and everything. So there are people of nations like yours that, say globalism is great because, our people are going to be stuck into the top echelons of WHO and all the secretariats and all this stuff. Whereas if we did it strictly on a population, our share of the global population, we wouldn't get much. I think that's the case in Scandinavia, Norway, Sweden, even Britain, France, Germany. These are, not that our country is that vast, but these are countries that have small populations and a lot to gain being on the right side of the globalist order. So you got those type of globalists. Then you have, of course, the investment firms and the lawyers and the accountants and all those bankers. They love globalism. They love flying around the world, going to conferences, putting deals together, and the media people the same way, as do the academics. So everyone embraces this theory of globalism without thinking it through, in my view, carefully enough. And the reason they're not thinking through carefully enough, in the United States market, and if we lump it together with Canada and Mexico, we say those three nations will share sort of the same portion of the world. You can drive from Canada all the way down to Mexico if you want. Yes, there are differences, but that unified set of customers is by far and away the largest market in the world, consumer market in the world, by far and away. The second one, China, when you look at it carefully, when you dissect China, its consumer market is minuscule. They have been spending a tremendous amount of money on infrastructure. I would argue burning it, and we're seeing some evidence of
crazy ghost cities, right?
Right. But when you any country in the world, you can look at, this is my business, what I used to do, looking and buying and selling companies, you have to quickly figure out what's going on. The so-called 80-20 rule, when you take the top 20% by income in a country, what share of consumption do they account for? Okay. In a developing nation, or along the route nation like China, which is not fully developed yet, the top 20% disproportionately consume a lot. And the bottom 80%, therefore, have a very low standard, very low per household demand for anything. So it's very muddy thinking to believe that what you're doing by going after business in China is to go after the end-use consumer. You're not. What you're doing is you're trying to put infrastructure deals together to build hospitals and roads and buildings and this and that. And that's, once again, that's a globalist thing. That's not, that's just you're paying lip service to a concept that is actually destroying, I think, livelihoods inside your country, inside our country. Mexico's a lower standard of living. But, our workers, your workers are highly paid on world scale. Technology is moving along here and very rapidly, and we're getting to a place where it doesn't really make sense to hire expensive humans if you can replace them with inexpensive robots and technology. And that's where we then get back to this project here that, some in the United States, maybe your audience has a different view, but I agree with, I don't like Ross Perot. I find him to be incredibly annoying. But when he said that NAFTA would lead to the giant sucking sound, he was right. And, that's annoying. Well, let's let bygones be bygones. Let's forget about that for a second. Just forget Mexico, too. Between Canada and the United States, we control jointly, but each controls our territory ourselves, a vast, disproportionate store of the world's fresh water, resources, affluent customers. And, there's a lot of commonality, frankly, between Canada and the United States. And you can manufacture and ship inside stable countries, Canada and the United States. You don't have to mess around with this last millennium approach of, sending your guts of a car over to China to be slapped together and imported back here into Canada or the United States. You don't have to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, the risks inherent with all that, the extra fuel costs and the complexity of an organization that's set up that way, as opposed to setting up a business in where you are there in Calgary. I wouldn't want to do that because it's awfully cold up there. But those people who like the cold, you could set up a business around Calgary, even rural areas, and, avail yourself of the work ethic of the people who live in those rural areas and ship goods and or services to affluent customers in the United States without worrying about sending a ship over to China or Africa or whatever. And as the realization grows that these very complex organizations that have been established since 1989, 1990 don't make sense, people are going to rush back home to the United States, to Canada and elsewhere. And if we can think, the United States is going to go by hook or by crook to a lower tax rate regime. And I'm pushing like heck to get the Trump people to think about, let's put the tax havens out of business. Let's figure out a way to make it, much more interesting for people to invest inside the United States of America.
Yeah.
Why should Ireland have the deal it has in Europe? We can do a lot to really turbocharge this economy. And I think the people who are all around Clinton, we're not being honest about her accomplishments and Bill's failures. I mean, to the notion that Hillary Clinton is a feminist is an insult to my very good friend Kathleen Willey, and I met her once, Juanita Broderick and Paula Jones and Kathy Shelton. I mean, get a grip. Now, any feminist would have divorced Bill Clinton a long time ago with extreme prejudice. So if there's blowback from this comment or blowback from the last one, bring it.
Well, the media, you wouldn't have seen this in the mainstream media, but in the independent media sure showed a lot of focus on the false philanthropy from probably a lot from your work and, exposing a lot of this. But did this result, I feel like it slowed down quite a bit. There was less influence from these foundations. Would you agree over the last year that it slowed down quite a bit? And then the other part of it is the pushback is so intense and so real. And I believe that your work is at the core of why that pushback is there. Because if the Clinton Foundation falls as a vehicle of influence, then it's the whole house of cards is going to come down with all these other organizations and false charities. And I mean, didn't Soros just put $18 billion? That's $18,000 million into a bunch of organizations. I mean, it's just, so I guess there's a lot to sort of unpack there, but what are your thoughts?
All right. So what I would say to you is that I realized, not because I have political experience, but just thinking it through, that it would take time for Donald Trump to find his feet. That is to say, to get his people, our governments are so, the various branches of government are so big, there's so many positions, there's so many ways that swamp creatures can slow you down. So I realized that it would take time for Donald Trump to get this ship righted. And now we know, of course, that this is a separate strand we could discuss. We know that the never-Trumpers, that is to say the Republicans who don't like Trump, and many of those are in the Bush wing, were humbled by the fact that Trump destroyed Jeb Bush, would raise $100 million in several minutes. He got rid of the low-energy Jeb. And, that wing, the people who, don't like, Trump's vulgarity and boorishness and proportions of his life, and of course, the Democrats who have been humiliated, who are humiliated, and the fake news down here have been fighting tooth and nail. And I've been watching carefully. The thing that I thought was, the most important was to get this Gorsuch across the Supreme Court. He's done that. And the next thing I was wondering about is were they going to change the helm of the IRS? And now we have that's going to happen by the 13th of November. So in several days, we'll have a new non-swamp creature in charge of the IRS. So I realized that there would be, just as in our World War II experience, 10 years after or 15 years after World War II, you'd have these Japanese soldiers come out of some Pacific jungle somewhere thinking that the emperor was still in charge of the world. And similarly, down here in America, we have the same approach. These various people who really think that you can unseat Donald Trump by spreading dirt and paying $12 million for garbage and breaking all the rules as Obama left the White House. Well, you can't do that. And so I've been using my time productively. I can't say which authorities, but I can say that there are numerous governments inside and out, government authorities inside and outside the United States of America who have had their eyes and do have their eyes keenly on the date November 15th, 2017. That is the day where the Clinton Foundation trustees have to file tax returns for 2016. And it is my contention, and those are the experts I speak to, that you cannot do that lawfully without filing a tax return for 1997, the short period that it operated, which it had never done, correcting all your returns from 1998 to 2015 and all your audits, getting real audits, and confessing to charity fraud. You don't have a prayer of doing this lawfully without making a confession that then implicates you. And you got to implicate yourself because you raised money across state and national boundaries on the basis of false and materially misleading information. Now, turning to Canada, Canada does have, and you know your country far better than I do, but I was surprised to learn this morning that Justin Trudeau, Justin Trudeau his family has a foundation, and it was started by his father. And the suspicion is that the Trudeaus have been close to the Clintons, and the Clintons are also close to leaders up in Quebec. And your government, according to Bill Clinton, in a book that he wrote or was published in September 2007, called Giving, ironically a book for which he was paid about $6.4 million to write a book about charity. That's kind of interesting. And he never disclosed any of that in the charity filings, which you have to do. He claims in that book that the government of Canada and citizens in Canada began giving money in 2002 to fight HIV/AIDS by the Clinton Foundation. Well, there are many problems with that. The first problem is that the Clinton Foundation was certainly not authorized in 2002 to fight HIV/AIDS internationally. That's the first problem. The second problem is it wasn't registered to solicit in key states in the United States to do that and around the world. The third problem is that Bill Clinton was not a trustee or executive officer of the Clinton Foundation until at Clinton Foundation level, 2013, and at this new HIV/AIDS, this illegal new one that was set up in 2009 until late 2009. So Bill held himself out as being in control of an organization where formerly he had no legal controls. He began soliciting. He attracted Frank Giustra, the prominent Canadian billionaire, I think originally who lives out there in Vancouver somewhere, to begin giving, by some accounts, $31 million to the Clinton Foundation. Now, there is an amount in 2006 that does look like the $31.3 million claimed in a New York Times article. But the problem with that is that Frank Giustra claimed in an interview that he gave that money to fight HIV/AIDS in 2006. Well, in 2006, the Clinton Foundation certainly was not authorized to fight HIV/AIDS anywhere, and indeed likely had been turned down by our own IRS for that purpose. Thereafter, in 2007, Frank Giustra and Bill Clinton people got together and they created this joint venture up in Canada illegally, relying on false representations from the Clinton Foundation, entering into an agency agreement where in this joint venture, a Canadian charity that is listed up in, is registered up in Canada, was supposedly controlled by the main Clinton Foundation from New York. But the New York filings don't properly reflect that. The federal filings don't properly reflect that. And our laws are actually not as strict as your laws. Canadian laws only allow Canadian citizens, I believe, to make donations against their American income if they put money into an American charity. That's step one. If he made the donation from American income into the American Clinton Foundation in 2006 of $31.3 million, he has serious problems. I don't know how you would have done it. The Clinton Foundation didn't register in Canada, I don't believe, until 2010. So, you can go into this. It's like it's speaking of blowback, this is bring me some blowback, and I'm going to counter it with nuclear weapons. Because, what you have here, you have a long botched relationship as far as Canadian, federal, U.S., and state laws and international laws are concerned with the Clinton Foundation, starting in 2005-6 timeframe. Why then did Frank Giustra agree to go on the main Clinton Foundation board in 2013? Either he did no due diligence at all and doesn't care about Canadian and U.S. law, right?
Yep.
Or he's complicit in this. He's a driving force in this.
Yeah.
I mean, this thing has never had the kind of controls and independent trustees that it needs. And it's never had an accounting firm worth its salt to actually play by the rules. So when you have a presidential charity run by celebrities who also have spouses who are politically ambitious, and the fraudsters around the world figure that out, how valuable is it to have the President of the United States under your thumb, because that Hillary Clinton has been a party to a long-standing, long-running, multi-billion-dollar multinational fraud, and now she would have been the President of the United States. Yeah. I mean, that's pretty valuable stuff. Think of what you can get by way of authorizations for deals, by way of maybe contracts, investments, the money from U.S. government influenced and multilateral organizations. I mean, give them $31 million and you get back $31 billion, hypothetically.
Yeah.
So this is the thing, I have your own country, as you know better than I, is also divided politically. I think it leans a little bit more left than ours.
Yeah.
But nonetheless,
you don't think so, Darren?
No, I think it's going to snap back. I think it's about to snap back. If talking to all my liberal friends in Ontario is any decent sample size.
Well, I think what's happening down south is also really opened people's eyes as well. I mean, I used to be more of a liberal. Like I have a transition. I mean, I was at a point where I didn't even want to follow politics, or I didn't even really have a side at all, but I was more liberal at heart. But now it's just, I've shifted, and it's not that I've gone right. I've just realizing the global corruption that's going on. It's just sort of made me back off of it completely in a way. So Darren's got something on the screen here that while you were talking, he was just searching.
Well, it's our
Trudeau Foundation.
It's on our National Post, which I guess would be the equivalent of your New York Times or something.
Which is weird because they're liberal, I think. Most of our media is very bad as well as far as being biased.
And this is from December of last year. And it's got the Trudeau Foundation donations from 2008 to 2016. So in 2008, it was about $2 million. In 2011, it was $67 million. And then he took over the Liberal Party in 2014.
And then we started getting foreign donations.
Yeah, he jumped up to $172 million. $53 million was foreign donations. In 2015 now, when he's head of the Liberal Party, he's got $634 million.
Well, that was when he was prime minister, wasn't it?
Yeah, he would have been prime minister then.
So as soon as he became prime minister, the donations jumped up to $634 million. And then in 2016...
428 of which were foreign.
Yeah, foreign. And
in 2016, he had $750 million.
Yeah.
$500 million of which is foreign.
That's outrageous.
Yeah.
And is that Canadian money?
Yeah, probably.
Canadian dollars?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, but nonetheless, it's a lot of money, and it's a very bad practice. I think, as I was saying on earlier today, I think politicians of powerful countries. Canada is a big, powerful country. A lot of people around the world look to Canada as, try to follow the practices and policies of Canada, as some try to follow the United States and other big countries. And I think the practice of, letting there be dynastic political families like the Trudeaus, like the Bushes, like the Clintons, maybe like the Obamas, in a democracy is a very bad idea when you marry it up with a foundation, because under our system, possibly under your system, people can give money to foundations and basically end up subsidizing costs that should be borne by the politicians in their political operations, but are instead shifted to the foundation, and they can more tax efficiently in our country make contributions which really are illegal to favor a politician in the guise of charity. They could walk around and say, I didn't give money to the campaign. I gave it to the foundation. And, another news flash for you, I may not win any popularity contests for this, but I was recently told, and I verified, that your finance minister has some issues as well. Your finance minister has ties to foundations. Your finance minister has a family business that seems to specialize in creating these offshore companies. And your finance minister has been attacked by various and sundry people for not being fully disclosing enough what's happening with this regime of offshore companies. And I just think that's the wrong way to go. We shouldn't be having these politicians. It's not simply in Canada and simply in the U.S. We have Tony Blair doing the same thing in the U.K. We have people doing the same thing in Australia. What's worse is we have these, former world leaders like Bill Clinton and others, and this lady in Australia. What they do is they figure out how to pick the pockets of the UN. And they create this new anti-slavery foundation that's going to be created. And friends of mine are very much against it because the people involved in it, are not pristine. And we shouldn't be using the desperately poor, thin faces of brown-skinned people around the world to coax, untold billions, maybe tens of billions of dollars, as happened for the HIV/AIDS thing, now maybe for slavery, into a bureaucracy controlled by political types who don't report and are not careful enough with money. That's just the wrong way to go. I mean, your country does have many other businesses than energy, but low energy prices, generally speaking, are not good for Canada. And we have been in a process of low energy prices. You have your social welfare costs that are higher than ours, particularly in Ontario, Quebec, and other places. And these are not small amounts of money or small obligations. We shouldn't be, either in your country or our country, in a business of creating these entrenched systems for bureaucrats to throw money and burn money and send money to foundations that they control to support lavish lifestyles, all while pretending that they're serving the public.
Exactly. We've been talking about that, Darren. When did you find out there was billions of our money going to the Clinton Foundation and other,
something like $5 billion a year in foreign aid?
Yeah. Which, I mean, some of it, they might need it, but I mean, where is that going?
Some of that, I worry that some of that is coming back to the Trudeau Foundation.
Yeah, exactly. Or the Clinton. Some of that went to the Clinton Foundation.
You take your 20% and fucking send us to the rest back.
Yeah.
Right. Well, so the big, when you have an international foundation or an international business, and I specialized in doing merger and acquisition transactions and private investments in multinational companies. It's very complicated work. I mean, you can get it done, and it's rewarding and exciting, and it's fun to do it properly. But if you want to do it improperly, you game the controls, you get a stupid accountant that doesn't really have a mission or an inclination to do the work for you. Currencies move around like crazy, and you can manufacture invoices. I mean, the first trick in one of these multinational frauds, the charity fraud, is you don't tell the truth about how much money you actually raised. And people are very generous. You describe some. Here I'll speak about Manhattan. I mean, we had the tragedy yesterday, but during September 11th, 2001, I happened to be here that period, and the sudden, spontaneous, gigantic donations of money and blankets and medicine and all that came to one of the richest cities on earth from perfect strangers around the world was unbelievable.
Yeah.
Not to mention the people who got in cars from all over, wherever, just dropped everything anybody with medical training or first responders, they just came flooding into the city to try to help. And that's the human spirit is actually, that's what they do. But if you're you sit there as a bunch of leeches, which many of these people are, I would argue, and wait for the next volcano, wait for the next earthquake, wait for the next flood, wait for the next refugee stream, and then mount a campaign, you're going to get a lot of money over the internet, by telephone, by mail. It's going to come to an account. And the first step will be, how much do we say we got? We got 70 billion. Well, why don't we say we got 10? And steal 60 billion. Yeah. I'm just making those numbers up. So there should be a system in the developed, the G8 countries for sure, because that's where the bulk of the wealth and the money is, that a charity must have one main incoming address, one bank account only, and you cannot send money towards an official charity unless you send it to that account. And if you find money's going to any other account, you shut that charity down. You have to have severe penalties for the trustees. They can never work in a position of trust again. They have severe monetary penalties. You throw the trustees in jail for 10 years, 20 years. You've got to put the fear of God in these people, the fear of something in these people. And, so the first step is diverting from, the real incoming stream. The next step is what I suspect has been going on with the Clinton Foundation is that the books and records shown to the public are invented. You want to manufacture either a small profit or a loss, but so you have to create expenses. So you have false invoices in the construction of the complex out there in Little Rock. Mark Stein, I forget where Mark Stein is from, whether he's from Australia, England, or Canada, but Mark Steyn had a very funny appearance on Tucker Carlson where he pointed out that the annual travel expenses for the entire British royal family are like £7 million or something. How does the Clinton Foundation spend $70 million through all its entities on travel? How do you do that?
Holy!
It's what are they? Are they going up on like a space shuttle? By a space shuttle up to Little Rock and back.
It took me like 5 years to convince my wife to let me buy a $30,000 truck.
Yeah, well, you get her a job at the Clinton Foundation. But anyway,
I'm not kidding. I'll just start a foundation. Yeah, we'll put it in Graham's name.
No, you wouldn't do that. No. But so the next step though is to manufacture false invoices. And if you're operating, as they say they were, they're raising money to buy pharmaceuticals, generic pharmaceuticals, to distribute them in very difficult countries, where there are no roads, no electricity, no hospitals, no doctors, no nurses, no real controls. And by the way, they're mostly run by corrupt politicians. So, what could possibly go wrong with that, right? That you could overstate the amount of money you paid to the perceived vendor. The vendor could ship you an adulterated product. You could split the proceeds with the corrupt leaders. No one's going to check anyway. No one's going to really be able to say, did Bill Clinton actually, send $7 million worth of stuff into Cote d'Ivoire, into, the rural Cote d'Ivoire? I'm just making numbers up now, but $7 million over the course of 2006 to 2009 of spending in that country, roughly. I've been there long ago, 40 years ago. Actually, the capital is wonderful, or was wonderful. It was an interesting country back then. But the rural places are so desperately poor, so parched. As you get head up north, it's, very dry country. And, there's no way you're going to be able to actually get the medicine out to the needy people in the rural areas. And by the way, in many of these countries where they say they operated, it's different than it is here in Canada and the United States, where the United States, most people, believe it or not, are clustered in maybe not urban centers, but, metropolitan areas. And that's not the case in a lot of Africa. The people still live in the bush, concentrated in the bush. Therefore, they're away from roads, away from the electric grid, and you can't when you're treating HIV/AIDS, it's not like you can just give somebody a dry pill and walk away, and that's great. There's side effects. Often there are multiple diseases people are fighting. These people are very thin. They lack clean water. And, and the Clintons have been trying to hide the true extent of their gross dereliction of duty starting in 2002, going up to your good people in Canada and saying, hey, give us some money and we're going to fight HIV/AIDS, but not telling you that the drugs they were using seem to have been purchased in part from a company called Ranbaxy, generic Indian company, that paid a $500 million fine and had to admit that no medicines that they manufactured anywhere in the world had been tested prior to August of 2004. And the Clinton Foundation certainly began working with them by October of 2003 and solicited money from your country by Bill's admission and by people inside your country starting in 2002. You know, that's
buying shoddy
really
medicine.
bad behavior.
Yeah.
Yeah. And read the Fortune magazine article, Dirty Medicine. It summarizes some of this. So the short answer to your question is that I have, you know, I want to expose this fully. I want the truth out. And I have been successful in getting some very powerful governments to devote resources to this. This is coming out. And I have a message to Mr. Trudeau and a message to Mr. Morneau. It is a very unwise move to obstruct the investigation here, because while your country has made, the government of Canada and people in Canada have made substantial contributions, you are not anywhere near the largest donors. And some of the largest donors are very upset and are moving very aggressively. And people who obstruct this investigation will eventually be seen to have obstructed the investigation. And good people across Canada are going to say, now, wait a minute. You know, A, why does our leader have such a big foundation? How did that happen? B, why is our leader prepared to overlook, and our finance minister overlook, an investigation or obstruct or stop an investigation of why Canada seems to have these strange ties with the Clinton Foundation and strong rules, strict rules about regulating charities, but inside Canada, and in particular, you know, Canadian charities that operate outside Canada absolutely can only follow the legitimate authorized purposes under Canadian law for that charity. Why is the Trudeau administration and the finance minister so willing to be so lenient and maybe even obstruct an investigation into a case where perhaps, you know, we hear in the Uranium One period that $145 million may have come down from Canada into various Clinton Foundation charities. There is no record in the U.S. books of that I see. So where did that money, how much money really came out of Canada? Where did it really go? And in the earlier period, this $31.3 million that Juster sent in 2006, why would he send $31.3 million into a charity that didn't lawfully exist to fight HIV/AIDS and may have been doing so in that year with adulterated drugs that were then even being investigated by our own FDA, which is our Food and Drug Administration? I mean, there are a lot of questions here. And I actually think out of all this, I'm not seeking a political advantage here or a political position. I just care that, you know, the charity world the regulation of the charity world needs to be brought into the 21st century. There are a lot of very decent human beings who either work in the charity world and or give money to charity, and they expect charities to be run well. And many certainly gave to the Clinton Foundation and may give to the Trudeau Foundation seeking a political advantage. I don't doubt that. But that's not the typical human person who gives to charity. Down here, and I guess in Canada, you know, it's lower income, middle income people who give. When you add up their many millions of small donations, they're a lot more significant, believe it or not, than donations made, as you mentioned, by George Soros or others, because our countries are so rich and people are generous. You know, they do give. In your country, in our country, they tithe, they give money to religious organizations, they give lots of money to schools and hospitals. And, you know, the Clintons, it's not, I wouldn't have been on this as much as I have been on it if the Clintons had not made so much of their own charity and bragging about it around the world, you know, trying to make, you know, that's the reason you ought to make me president is look at all the good work Bill and I have been doing around the world. I mean, you start going down that path, and I've got a problem with that.
Yeah. So what about all the other organizations that might not be called charity that people like Soros are funding billions into? I mean, is there anything that we can do there, or you can do there, or are you looking at that, or what? Like, because that seems to be one of the next big influences. Like, I feel like a lot of the movements that are going on, especially down in the States right now, are not organic. They're bought and sold movements, and people are being, you know, hired and all that. It's a different situation, but it's somewhat similar because it's still, you know, this influence being push through organizations.
Yeah, well, you mentioned my show, so it's called Sunday with Charles. It's on the YouTube channel actually, and it's in association with a group called Crowdsource the Truth, which is probably a group you guys should know. These are independent people, some in Canada, who are just keenly interested in becoming more active, and they feed us leads. And Crowdsource the Truth, I think, has 20,000 members now, which is decent, and our shows get decent viewing. But on the last several shows, one is titled Walking Tall 3. We try to spoof a little bit off movies.
Okay.
And that's a very long show. That was 2 hours and 40 minutes. And I lay out in some depth. There's a 17-page slide presentation with links that
Nice.
I get through that. And I did another one today. It was an hour and 40 minutes called The Usual Suspects. And we're going to do another one. I generally do it on Sunday, but in the period prior to November 15th, 2017, we're going to do 2 a week. There's a lot to cover.
Yep.
And in the one Walking Tall, we get into that a little bit. So in the United States, and I don't know how Canada works, but in the United States, you may not operate a charity to advance the political interests of a candidate, a specific candidate, or a party against somebody. You're not allowed to do that. It's strictly prohibited. Now, what George Soros has done over the course of his long and sordid career, in my view, is to funnel money towards charities. So the first thing I think he and others did is they figured out how to game the system by putting that lady Lois Lerner and other people into the IRS who were inclined to look the other way and not only make the decision, as apparently did happen, to prosecute conservative groups starting in 2009-10 period, but to overlook the abuses of left-leaning groups. So there are quite a few left-leaning groups. There's one famous one. I already reported them to the authority called Media Matters, which is funded by Soros.
Yeah.
And they are illegally organized and operated, and what they do is they exclusively criticize conservatives. You're not allowed to do that as a charity. You can do that. We have something called an action organization, and that's where you give your money, your after-tax money, to the organization. And yeah, you can do that if it's after-tax money. Go for it. But charities, where you deduct it off your personal income tax return, or maybe a corporate, charities cannot, they can't be involved in that type of activity, helping one candidate or another. And Soros, you're right, has done a lot of that. The Clintons have certainly done a lot of that. To be fair, Republicans have done it as well. But nobody, I mean, the Clinton Foundation set of fraud, since the last time we spoke, I now estimate all of its corners and contours, at order of magnitude. I originally was calling it last year $100 billion criminal conspiracy. I think it's now in the trillions.
Wow.
When you consider its many tentacles and the affiliates and the business deals that are cut around it and not disclosed as they need to be disclosed, I think you're talking about the largest unprosecuted set of frauds in history, far bigger than Madoff, far bigger than Ponzi, and adjusting to modern dollars. And this isn't a bunch of rubes. These are people who all sorts of people around the Clinton Foundation, including the Clintons, have multiple advanced degrees from world famous universities. They've held high level positions. They can't say they're stupid and they didn't understand the charity rules and the laws. I mean, Bill Clinton was the Attorney General of Arkansas. He was obviously the President of the United States for 8 years. I mean, that's the highest legal officer in the land. He has a law degree. He was a Rhodes Scholar. Hillary's credentials are lighter, but none of the Clintons can claim they didn't understand this, didn't have the ability to understand this. And it's not as if they got involved with somebody else's charity. The damn thing is called the Bill, Hillary, and Chelsea Clinton Foundation. What does it say about somebody who would run a foundation in their own name this poorly? And so, for the first time ever in the life of this charity, we will have somebody in charge of the IRS, we will have a president, and we will have both houses of Congress in a position where if they want to administer the justice that is deserved, they can do it. And we also have in Donald Trump somebody who's interested in draining the swamp. And as I've been saying for the last week or so very publicly on different channels and now yours, this is a great exercise here, because the people who should be disciplined are not just the Clintons, but the donors to the Clinton Foundation.
Yeah.
The Gates Foundation, these many other foundations. Why? They're not stupid people. they have accountants, they have lawyers, they have the ability to check and see whether the Clinton Foundation is a fraud. They should have known it was a fraud. Why did they continue? I notified them 2 years ago. I said, look, you got a problem here, buds. Here's why. Nothing back. I notified several of these foundations. And I think what people were thinking last year was, Charles, we love you and all that, but Hillary's going to be the next president. Remember these last few moments of your freedom. But that's not what happened. Hillary's not the president. And now we have our budget deficit. I don't know how big it is in this year, but our total debt is $20 trillion down here. We need to, we've got to get some tax revenue in the door. And what better way? We got $5 trillion in charities, sitting in the assets of charities. What percentage of those charities have been run like the Clintons?
Yeah.
And the penalties down here for running a charity the financial penalties are so severe. You start with giving all your money back, getting lawsuits against you, criminal jail terms. We've got a congressperson who's trying to get out of her appointment to be sentenced. I think it's for 18 felony counts operating an $800,000 slush fund. She's an African-American congressman from Florida, almost 70 years old. And she faces hundreds of years in prison for an $800,000 slush fund operated under far fewer than 21 years. So, we got some drama down here. And I think Mr. Trudeau and Mr. Morneau and the politicians who are trying to think through how NAFTA is going to get renegotiated and what's going to happen down here, you're making a big mistake if you embrace the Clintons. A massive mistake.
Yeah.
Far smarter move. Fess up. How much money did you give the Clinton Foundation? How badly were you duped?
Yeah.
And then join the party of trying to get your money back.
Yeah, I mean, regardless of whether they knew some of these little legalities of the foundation, how it was set up, and whether all the I's were dotted and T's were crossed, it's obviously been exposed as a pay to play, and with all the people that are donating to that and all the favors that have been gotten, it's blown all that other stuff away. So have you also investigated like other politicians coming out, like Obama's My Brother's Keeper and stuff like that?
It's funny you should mention that. Indeed, I have. And right now, Obama is there's some kind of global confab up there in Chicago where they're emulating the Clinton Foundations. And I actually, not only have I investigated, I happen to know a trustee of the Obama Foundation, and I warned that person last year. I said,
wow.
Look, you better tell the president that he's got to get the paperwork fixed on your foundation because you're in a heap of trouble if you don't do that. And they didn't listen to me. And so they're emulating the Clintons. And so I gave them fair warning, and I've sicked a bunch of investigators on. I've reported the Obama Foundation. And, I think it's going to have to shut down because Illinois is not a law unto its own. There's going to be a new IRS head. The Obama Foundation was organized originally when Obama was president, January 31st, 2014, to be an entity to house presidential records. We have a special statute in the United States, Presidential Records Act of 1978, that defines what a record is. And then we have another one, the Presidential Libraries Act of 1955, amended 86, which defines what a presidential library is. So they got the thing authorized when Obama controlled everything as a presidential library. Then he recently has announced, actually, we're not going to hold any presidential records. You can't do that. Legally in the U.S., you cannot do that. You get authorized for a set of purposes. They must be in your articles of incorporation. You can't then do something else. And yet he's already down that path. He hasn't raised that much money. But, I put them on notice. We've had some articles come out. I'm now regularly on the radio and television talking about it. And, certainly the Trump people understand this. And my suggestion is in the Walking Tall 3, I talk about, why don't we do a little study that starts with the George H.W. Bush Foundation, moves on to the Clinton, moves then on to the George W. Bush, and now to the Barack Obama Foundation. And let's also look for good measure at Carter's Foundation. Throw in some other ones. Make it a bipartisan affair.
Yeah.
Let's check and see how all these foundations are operating. And, we have to remember the presidential records that are supposed to be in these foundations are the property of we the people in America. They're not Bill Clinton's property or Barack Obama's property. And scholars have an absolute right to study these things. We shouldn't be setting up presidential libraries that are basically preserves so that the partisans who support the Bush family, the Clinton family, the Obama family, whatever, can make sure that only good news is studied.
Yeah.
I mean, there's something rotten with the system. I can't speak to the Canadian system. I don't know how that works. But, I think this is just fundamentally a very bad idea to have, leaders have foundations. I'm not so sure that it's a great idea to have a Gates Foundation either.
Yeah.
I think these foundations that are foundations that solicit from the public, small bits and bobs from the public, and are independent, not under the thumb of any one person, actually are controlled. Those are good ideas. But vanity foundations in the name of one family, I don't know about that one.
Yeah. So I really think it's a good idea that you're getting yourself on video and YouTube. But do you worry about the censorship aspect? I mean, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook has all been, very, very, and even Google for that matter, it's all very censored now. And the type of stuff you're talking about will be censored. So do you have any
YouTube,
backup
it
plans?
seems to be mainly monetization. So if you're not worried about that.
Well, no, it's algorithms and stuff too. I mean, his videos won't show up at the top like they would before. They've already changed a lot of that.
Right, yeah.
So far, what I've been at this now almost 2.5 years exposing this. So what I've been able to do is get to a number of, all I need is one attorney general in the United States in one state, and the U.S. attorney general and one foreign government, and the House, the Senate. I mean, that's all I don't need 100,000 views.
Right.
That said, quite a few of my videos. Stefan Molyneux, with whom I've been on a bunch of times, is 125,000.
Yeah.
Lionel got a whole bunch on his. This new show I'm doing regularly gets 7, 8, 10, 12,000 views in a week for lengthy videos. Videos that are almost 2 hours in some cases. So I think the word is out there, and people are now. We've got a countdown clock to November 15th, 2017, to see what will happen. And no mercy, as far as I'm concerned, for these Clintons. I mean, this has been. I mean, I don't know why. It seems that some people in Ontario just love the Clintons. Why are people in Ontario spending $225,000 to listen to Hillary Clinton give the same tired remarks to the same old audience, but not really revealing much? I mean, I don't know. Maybe Canada's much richer than I thought, but $225,000 for, let's say, a 20, 30, 40-minute speech is a lot of money.
Well, it's not if you're getting favors for it. I mean, it's not about the speech.
Right, but you see my point. I mean, I don't, I'm somebody, would I mind if somebody wanted to pay me $225,000 for a speech? I'd turn it down. It's just not, I don't want to be beholden to somebody. I want to get into the swamp. I mean, that's just too high. It's not right. There's that person who wants more than the money they're giving from me. It's just not right. You have that much money to burn, pay down the national debt.
Yeah. Yeah, you bet.
Bingo, bango. So you think the writing's on the wall? What's today?
Today's the first.
2 weeks from today.
Yeah. Oof.
Well, and it's worse. For them, it's worse than that because it's not like they can wait until November 15th. I mean, right now, Frank Schuster's people have got to make a decision, and he and his people, because he's a rich guy on the board. When this thing goes down, he will be sued, and if his assets are attachable, they will be attached. So he and the other billionaires on the board of the Clinton Foundation, the big accounting firms around this thing, law firms around this thing, big donors to the Clinton Foundation, they're going to get sued. Not by me, but they're going to get sued. And because people are going to be saying, the Canadian government should say, I put money into the Clinton Foundation because Frank Schuster's a smart guy. I thought. And I was happy to put money in because I figured he'd check this out.
Yeah.
What were you doing, Frank?
Yeah.
And it's one thing for Charles Ortel to ask that question, but it's yet another thing for the federal, whoever the right guy is or woman in Canada, to ask a private citizen, what were you doing? And then all these foundations, what are the foundations there? The Radcliffe Foundation, the various, I don't know if the Trudeau Foundation gave money to the Clinton Foundation, but, people should be asking some very tough questions here.
Yep.
The Canadian government certainly did. So do you think it's like you speak with like certainty? Like, do you think this is guaranteed dead ringer that, you know, a couple months from now the Clinton Foundation is coming down?
Well, again, you know, I'm not in the business of predicting the future, but I think absent some, you know, game-changing set of events, you know, a dread war, you know, something like that, or force majeure, absent that, by the 15th of November 2017, or on the 15th of November, we will learn either that the Clinton Foundation is prepared to file another set of false and materially misleading statements, okay, which will put them in even more jeopardy and take more time for this to come down, or we will learn that some grown-ups around the Democratic Party and around the Clinton Foundation have said, look, enough of this. Okay, you are in deep trouble. Don't compound your felonies. Confess, appoint a conservator. Penalty. Fortunately, you Clintons have got money. Other people got money. We'll make this. Unfortunately, the people of the United States have most of the presidential records. The complex will not be torn down. It will continue to exist in another guise. But spare yourself the additional jail time and financial penalties by at least cooperating with the appointment of a conservator to figure this thing out. So they're either going to fight it or not. If they fight it, they will lose bigly, as Trump likes to say, which actually is a word. But they'll lose more if they fight, by far. And then what people will have to do around them is to say, you know, it's easy for you know, the generals to say, well, let's have another million people go kill themselves to defend us. Well, what if those million people say, you know, actually, we don't want to do that, exactly. You know? And so if the executives and trustees and people should really, you know, challenge me on the HIV/AIDS thing. Prove to me that the Clinton Foundation at all times took the money they said they were going to use to fight HIV/AIDS and actually purchased drugs that were not adulterated and actually distributed those drugs in the places they did and actually didn't kill anybody. Prove that to me.
Yeah.
You can't. Okay? And so this is a serious issue, and, you know, it's not something where you get a pass because of your years of your lifetime of public service. You don't get a pass.
Well, I think that's something we need to look out for is within the next 2 weeks. I mean, before November 15th, I mean, something disastrous could happen to take the eyes off of that. Hey, Darren?
Let's hope not.
Well, that's always what what our kind of community here in Grimerica would assume, that there's, you know, when that sort of stuff starts to happen, that's when
there's a reason why these distractions happen.
These
right?
string pullers tend to do what they do.
Yeah. Right on. Well, it's been a great chat, Charles.
My pleasure.
Yeah, I really appreciate you doing that, and we're gonna link to, you know, all your new stuff, your new YouTube channel, and we'll keep an eye on that. And
yeah, I'm gonna check that out too. Everyone, make sure you head over and check out Charles's YouTube show. Have you given any thought to releasing the audio as in podcast format?
It's in podcast. It's just on there. If you go to Crowdsource the Truth, the site crowdsourcethetruth.org.
Okay, yeah, we'll check it out.
Yeah,
perfect.
It gets pretty good traction so far. We could always use more. Please follow me on Twitter. I'm at Charles Ortel. I try to do my best when people send me private messages. I try to answer them. I don't give my email address out over stuff like this, but I try to do a good job at interacting with people. I appreciate any leads. I am keenly interested. I do have roots in Canada, actually. There's a small town over there in Ontario called Spencerville, which there's, I think, a jazz festival there in the summer, and it was founded by my ancestor.
Oh, wow.
Peleg Spencer.
Cool.
Yeah.
Have you given any thought to coming up for the festival?
Yeah, I'm not. Maybe next year. I've been up there once. It's a pretty, rural area, but this is an interesting guy. I mean, the family went up there. We were on that branch of the family was on the wrong side of that little matter in 1776, and so they went up. They went up to Canada and ended up founding this town where they had a very early mill, several mills, and then the hotel and the bank and the this and that. but a very small town.
Yeah, right near the border.
And then from there,
yeah.
And from there, my ancestor who came to America arrived ultimately in Montana in 1864 and found a bunch of gold. And we were happy about that.
Yeah, no kidding.
Bingo bango. Well, big thanks to Charles for coming back on the show. Check out all his stuff. Yeah, thanks for all your work, and hopefully we'll be keeping an eye on the...
Be safe out there, for sure.
Yeah. Stay away from small aircraft and hot tubs.
Will do, and thanks for having me back on.
Right on, buddy. Okay, take care.
Bye-bye. That was our chat with Charles Ortel.
Whew. Got a bit of a sweat happening.
Yeah.
That was good.
Yeah, hopefully in a couple of weeks we'll see some traction. It's not even a partisan thing. I just like to see a big corruption come down and see if that can be, because I don't think Trudeau is above it. It's probably happening all over the place.
Yeah, definitely.
If it's happening in the first world in these countries that are supposed to be pinnacles, then it's just a trickle down effect. It's happening all across the scale. All our money's just, and we're wondering why. It just seems like the standard of living, I guess, is going up, but I don't know, inflation, the wages and everything.
I don't think the standard of living is
even
going
in
up.
Canada, it's not keeping up. Imagine what it's like in the third world.
You've seen those stats where 30 years ago, 40 years ago, you made this much, you could afford this much, or even longer than that. It would take you to buy a house. It really is hard. Look at the price of our basic foodstuffs and all that. Everything's skyrocketing except for wages. I mean, it is becoming unreasonable.
That's right.
So, and this is part of the problem. That and the fucking central banks and the debt-based system we're living in.
Absolutely. So hopefully you guys don't hate us too much for talking about Clinton corruption. You're
going to get people coming back and go, what about Trump University? And what about his going bankrupt and all this stuff? And I mean,
I'll tell you what, before you even start, just send me someone to come on to bitch about Trump's University and stuff, and we'll have them on too.
For sure. Yeah.
And then check out grimerica.ca/support, guys, so we can keep doing this kind of stuff, doing whatever we want. Sign up for a monthly if you can. There's everything there from $1 a month to $30 a month. Do check your subscription from time to time. I had a couple fall off in the last week or so. I give it up that some people do do drop the show.
You never tell me when that happens.
No, you get all sad. But I also think that people's credit cards just run out.
Double check.
So double check your subscription from time to time.
Don't listen to PayPal. They say that we disconnected it, because that never happened.
No, we would never do that.
No.
We'd never do that. All right. Other than that, guys, I think that's about it. If you can't afford to support the show financially, we understand that as well. So there's a bunch of different ways you can support the show for free by rating it, sharing it, reviewing it, signing people up for the newsletter, spam and gram.
GRAHAM at Grimerica.com.
That's right. But yeah, if you can, guys, the donations help for sure. And of course, that gives you access to the Black Budget feed, which I think is up to 13 or 14 episodes by now.
Yeah. And that's where we get a chance to sort of, I don't know, get a little crazy, and we realize that people, the only people that are listening to that are people that have really, helped us out, donating the show kind of thing. So it's a bit more controversial, I would say, and a little bit different content wise. And we're still putting more out in this regular show feed, but we need obviously your support to do that. So,
and it looks like more coming in this feed too. We just realized that we started recording doubles every week. So it looks like I think we're going to go up to probably 5 or 6 shows a month for you guys.
Yeah.
Free shows, and then we'll still do the show or 2 a month for the
Black Budget.
For the Black Budget. And I mean, hey, if a bunch of you guys sign up for Black Budget, maybe we'll even look at
what?
Adding some content in there.
Yeah, for sure. But we just can't do it now because we don't have enough people. You can't have a guest on and then sit them in their other, put them in the other feed where there's not a lot of
stuff. That's the tough thing we have. We can't throw a guest in for 50 people. Well, there's more than that.
There's more than 50, but yeah, it's difficult.
It's difficult.
But we're going to have some round tables, and there's a bunch of podcasts. There's a bunch of other podcasters that would love to do that, and we'll do it with them.
Exactly, and then we could also look at doing some return guests in the Black Budget feed.
We were going to put swapcasts in there, but then we realized that doesn't really work because people could just go to the other person's podcast and listen.
Yeah, so it's not really fair to you guys to make that premium content for you guys, and then you go there and everyone else can just listen to it for free over on their feed.
Yeah.
Anyway, something to think about. Support the show. If you get a little value, send some back. And I think that's about it. Happy we're past Halloween.
Yeah.
Whatever. Be kind to each other. Like this, who knows when this will come out?
Yeah.
All right, guys.
Well, hopefully before the 15th. I mean,
really. We should just release this sooner than later.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, guys. Thanks for listening. We will see you next week.
Expressions in digital audio format. Boy, does it sure feel good to be home, man. Searching for words, but they're right under my nose. And there's mouth-watering smells coming from the kitchen, cause Mom made a homemade pizza. On the back porch, I saw fresh flowers along the fence and all their colorful beauty. Mom and Dad sang a backyard alien UFO song. And then we talked about the next thing. I'm waiting on a call from some seemingly important people. And yes, we're still gonna need all the purple in the world. For the greater good, for the greater good. Dad's got a firefly in his palm for little Tori, cause she says she's afraid of the dark. There's cartoons on the boob tube, in a news feed of a car bomb in the newsroom. There's mosquitoes planning an invasion on the other side of the screen door. Mother, I've been drawing pictures a lot lately. It's some sort of therapy. And the phoenix rises from the ashes once again. This one's for all my foes. Those that have stepped on my toes before and have spoke ill of me behind closed doors. Unjustified, I say, but no worries, for I will ignore and block out their existence forevermore. And I will prevail, I will prevail. Expressions in digital audio format. Beauty machine is money is ugly, goes to show how deep down ugly, how deep down ugly.
Deep historical stuff from the influencers, you know, that you read, that stuff that I'm not really touching on very much, but every time I listen to some of that, I learned quite a bit. Right? There's a lot of organizations back then engineering us. I feel invaded.
Feel engineered. Yeah, you look a little engineered.
Yeah. Invaded. Engineering us. Invaded. Engineered. Engineering us. Invaded. Engineered.
Yeah, you look a little engineered.
We call it CSETI. Picture tents and camp and meditate and look at the sky, which is great. CSETI. Dark sky with the new moon, right? Picture tents and camp. And we call it CSETI.
Sounds like a party.
CSETI.